In this final recording, I want to show, for Unit 5, I want to show how to create mailing labels. The mailing labels themselves, the Access Wizards make very, very simple. But I do want to show some a little more advanced techniques, so we'll include those in here to make this recording a little more valuable. I'm again using pizza orders. I already have it open. I'm going to create a new report this time. But before I do, I'm going to build my report based on a query. And I already have a query that I built last time called customer report. But that doesn't quite meet my needs, because what I want to do is generate not mailing labels, but labels I'm going to put on pizza boxes. Unfortunately, I can't give an example, and I really don't need to because they're pretty straightforward, but I can't give an example of a classic mailing label: name, street, city, state, zip, that kind of thing. There's plenty of them in the book, and they're very clear, I think. But I do want to show you that you can create labels for something other than mailing labels. And in this case, I'm going to create a label for a pizza box, so that once the pizza is available, we slap the label on the box and it tells the driver what the person's name is. We don't have their address, unfortunately, but their phone number, what they ordered, and what the total is on this label. So that's my plan. But I need the phone number. Right? And I don't have that in my customer report. Right? And maybe I also want to display the first and last name. So what I'm going to do is copy this, because it's pretty close to what I want, and then paste it and give it a new name. I'm going to call it Query Customer Report Parameter, because that's one of the advanced techniques I want to talk about at the end of this recording, how we can combine parameter queries with reports and forms for that matter. Click on OK. So there's my new one, report parameter. Let's go to design view and add a few more things. For instance, I want the customer first name and last name and phone number. Now, I have all these other fields in here. I don't necessarily have to use them in every one of my reports and every one of my forms just because I created them in the query. I can have extra fields in there. Just ignore them when I use my report. But those are the pieces of data that I want. So I'm going to save that query and then use it as the foundation for a new labels report. To create labels, you simply click on Create. I have my query selected, so that should make life easier. Remember, always select the object that you want to use as the foundation for your report or your form, because it speeds up the process a little bit. So here's my labels. With labels, first thing you get to do is pick what kind of labels do you have. If you've got a box of labels, somewhere on the box it tells you the box number. If it's not exactly an Avery label, it probably on the back has a description somewhere that says these are equivalent to Avery 2160s, or these are equivalent to whatever other types of labels there may be here. So there's quite a list here that you can choose from. Maybe the first thing to do is go through the list and see if you can find the company that created the box of labels. If not, most labels have an equivalent to Avery labels. So we're just going to stick with the Avery labels. 2160 are your average or your standard mailing labels, 3 across, 10 down. I'm going to use those here because they work just fine for my pizza order. Can change the font. I think I'm going to go to font size 12 just to make it a little easier for my drivers to read. Instead of a light font weight, I'm going to use a normal font weight or a medium font weight, either one. I don't need any underlining. I don't need any color. So I'm just going to stick with that. Next. And now I get to add to this label whatever I want. So I'm going to, and this is the prototype label. This lets me set things up, and we'll look at what happens behind the scenes here in just a second. I want the first line of the label to contain the customer's first name, followed by a space. Now notice where my cursor is blinking up here. It's automatic. All I have to do is press the space bar, and then the customer's last name, which is already selected. When I double-clicked on the first name, it automatically selected the last name, figuring that's probably the next thing I want on my label. Double-click. Now in my label, I want to start a new line, so I press the Enter key. And underneath that, I now want to know the customer's phone number. Double-click that. That sits on a line by itself. Underneath that, I want to see the size pizza that the customer ordered. And underneath that, I want the word total. And notice all I have to do is type it, followed by the order total. So when you're creating these labels, it's a little bit different than all the other things we did. This putting the first and last name together would require concatenation. This total with the order total would require concatenation. This is a pretty cool wizard, I think. It just lets you type them and space them and put in any other characters that you want, however you want. Next, I don't want to sort these. Let's sort them by, yeah, customer name is fine. And we'll do order date underneath it. Okay, so those, however, they're going to be sorted. Next, what do we want to call this? Let's call this RPT Pizza Box Labels. Finish. And here we go. This is very hard to do manually with an empty report, because how do you get one record to go to the next column, to the next column, to the next column, instead of straight down? If I look at this in normal report view, notice how they all go straight down. How do you get them to go across? I don't know. So I'm glad the wizard is there to help me figure that out. If you want to see the actual labels, you use the print preview version. And so there's my labels. Let's take a look behind the scenes in design view at what actually happened. What actually happened is that Access created the concatenations for us. They add the trim function. All that does is take off extra spaces at the beginning and the end. So that's not, terribly useful as long as your fields don't have any excess spaces. But it did the concatenation, and down here there's my word total concatenated to the order total. So that wizard prevented or removed the requirement for us to do the concatenation. We could have done it in the query. Okay? I put first name, last name in here because I didn't want to see last name, first name. My customer name in the query is organized last name, first name. I want it the other way around. So I put those two separately, put my own space in there, and Access concatenated those string values together. A couple of issues here though. If we go back to preview, notice that my total, some of these only have one decimal place, some have none. It'd be nice if I could format that for currency. So I'm going to go to layout view, and I'm going to pick that value, and I'm going to go to format. I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to say, give me currency format. Press enter, and nothing happens. Why not? Well, the reason nothing happened is this is now a concatenated piece of text. Took this number, concatenated to total. So this is just text, and you can't, notice the entire orange box has the word total in it. You can't format that as a currency value. Well, that stinks. So now what do? A couple of options. All right. Easiest one, I think, is to use an advanced function that we haven't talked about before. So I'm going to go into design view, and I'm going to pick on my order total here, and I'm going to modify the data source. That's where the formula is right now. So there's my data source. I want to format just this piece. How do I do that? Well, let's take a look at the built-in functions, and I want to manipulate text. So this is a text function. And as you scroll through this, you discover the format function. By the way, many of these functions have two versions, format and format dollar. They're identical. Format dollar is in the old versions of Microsoft Office. Their function names had to have dollar signs. They don't anymore. So these two functions still both exist so that old Access databases functions still work. Today I don't use the dollar sign version. I want to format this. How does format work? If I click on this, you see you put in the expression, so that's the field. And then what format do you want to do? Offline I did a Google search on Access format function, and I found some examples on how to use it, so I'm just going to show it to you here. Clicking up in my formula, I'm going to type this, though I could double click this and then start filling stuff in, but I already have my field name here. So I'm going to say format. There's the format function. It, when I press tab, automatically put the parenthesis in there. Order total is the expression that I want to format. So now a comma, and the next thing I'm supposed to describe is the format. Now there's a number of ways to describe these formats. Very, very flexible. You can do some research in Google. The easy way is in quotation marks, just type the word currency. I want this order total only formatted for currency, then concatenate that to the total, is what that says. So let's see if that works. And there you can kind of see how it works. Format the order total, and if I use the arrow keys, you can make it a little bigger. Then there's a comma, and then how I want it formatted, currency. There are other ways, other formatting tools. Again, if you Google them, you can see them. In this case, I'm just going to do a preview, and sure enough, my order totals now have dollar signs and decimal places on them, and that looks much better. Now that I look at this, though, take a look at the phone number. The phone number Doesn't have any of the dashes in it because when I stored them in the database, there's no dashes. I was saving space. Well, normally the masks and the formatting that we have in our database propagate. I'm going to run my query here real quick. Double click. And notice here the formats have dots. The phone numbers have dots in them. How come those didn't transfer over to the report? Don't have a straight answer for you. Maybe it's because we did it in using a wizard. I don't know. Bottom line is there's no dashes. This formatting for the phone number has not made it into my report, so I'm going to have to add that manually. And again, with a little Google research and digging around, I discovered that format works on text as well. And you use the mask type characters. Remember the masks, what we talked about in Unit 1. Use the mask type characters to designate how you want these phone numbers formatted. So once again, going into layout view, you can do this from design view as well. I'm going to click a phone number and I'm going to go to its format. No, I'm going to go to its value here, and it's just the phone number. Right? There's no calculation, it's just a phone number. Well, I want to format this, so once again, press the home key, type the word format, parentheses, go to the end, add a comma, and now put in my format, again in quotation marks. The key part here is to remember to put quotation marks around your format. I think I want the area code in parentheses, and notice I'm going to use the required 0 digits now. 123-1234. So that's what I mean by it's similar to the mask format. And the numbers, the characters, the special codes that you use in masks also work here. I want parentheses around my area code, so there's open, close parentheses. I want space, I want a dash between the last 7 digits. And then this last parenthesis is for the format function. So I'm going to click on OK. And poof, my phone numbers are formatted. Look at them in print preview, and they all look good. However, this has pages and pages and pages. Doesn't tell me how many pages. So the last page, page 24, I got 24 pages of labels. If I'm putting pizza box orders, if I'm putting labels on my pizza boxes, I don't need to print the labels or even see the labels from the year 2013. I probably just want to see today's labels. Okay. So how do I restrict that? And the way I'm going to show you how to do this, you could go into this and click the date field, which isn't even in here, unfortunately. And we'd have to add it as a hidden field or something, and then filter on it. Yeah, not bad, but here's a better idea. I'm going into my query in design view. I'm going to make this a parameter query. Remember from Unit 2, we talked about parameter queries, where the query, before you execute it, asks you for information. So I'm going to add to my order date field in my query a parameter. Now remember the technique, you use the word like, okay, and then square brackets, actually concatenate, square brackets with our prompt inside. What do you want to ask for? Enter the date, square bracket, concatenated with an asterisk. So that basically says, give me a list of all the pizza orders with a date that looks like this one. Right. So now using this, if I wanted to see only the ones for July, I could say 7, and it would do it. What the like and the star really give you the ability to do is print them all again, but I don't think I'll ever want to do that. I could leave it out, but I'll set it in there and hopefully everything's okay. Okay, so now I have this query, and if I run it, that didn't work very well. Guess I should save it. Now let's run the query. And it didn't ask me what happened. I forget something in my prompt. So let's go back to the query. Design view. Take a look at what's in here. Yep, this ampersand doesn't belong here. So I'm going to take that out, and it added an extra quote. There shouldn't be an ampersand there. We're concatenating the star to the end of this. So let's see if that solves the problem. Run, yes, there's my parameter. I know that there's an 11/21/2013 date, and there's some orders. Okay, so that's the query. But remember that this report is based on that query. So now whenever you run the report, the parameter pops up first. So I'm going to go into preview, and notice the first thing it does is say, give me the date. 1121. I think I could just type 13. And I got nothing, so now I'm going to have to type the 2013. So I'm going to go back to design view and run it again. And every time I run it, it gives me the parameter 7 or 1121 2013. And now I get the labels just for this day. And I can enter today's date. Okay, there's no easy way to make it automatically pull in today's date. Okay, without, well, I suppose you could make a very complicated parameter with an if statement in it, but there's really no way to override it. Don't think there's a way in the parameter to automatically put today's date in that box. So this is some fairly complex techniques. The labels themselves are very easy to do because the wizard allows you to take fields, stick them together, put extra characters in there, put them on new lines, do all that stuff automatically, and Access takes care of the concatenation. But if you wish, you can format things, you can format phone numbers, and you can even add parameters to queries, and then base your reports and forms on those queries so that every time you run the report, it asks you, let's do that one more time. I'm going to close this report. And when I run the report, it's going to ask me for the date. That's not the report. Let's do the right one. Pizza box labels. What's the date? Okay. And it shows them to me. I'm all set. Okay, now notice it shows them to you by default in report layout view, but you can easily switch. And when you print them, doesn't matter. This is the way they're going to print. Even though they're showing them to you as a preview in this mode, when you print those, they will print normally. There is a way, I guess I can cover it here real quickly. There is a way, I'm going to go to layout view, to make these go down the page instead of across. But from my own experience with these labels, if you don't use a full sheet, it's usually better to go across and then down versus down and then across, but it doesn't matter much. If you want to change it, go to page, set up columns, and you can tell it to go down then across. The book refers to this as snaking. It causes a snake, but then doesn't that look like a snake? I guess. But down and across, or across then down. If I go this way and now do the print preview, notice it looks very much the same. And it will go down this entire column, fill those labels first, and then start the second column. Which one of those you use is up to you. I've found from personal experience that if you don't use an entire sheet of labels, it's generally easier to reuse that sheet later if the labels have been printed across and then down.